today's video, I asked you for your bold WrestleMania 41 predictions. And you guys came through because nearly 1,500 of you submitted some kind of prediction. So we're gonna go through a bunch of these. I'm gonna make fun of them, roast them, maybe agree with them, and expand on them. By the way, if you want to be part of these videos in the future, make sure that you're following me on X. Sometimes I do these videos from time to time. The link is in the description. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, ring the bell for notifications. If you're a wrestling fan, I'm incredibly confident that you're going to fall in love with this YouTube channel because we always upload daily wrestling content. And don't forget, if you want more than just daily wrestling content, come over to the Patreon, patreon.com/SantiZap, where we upload so much more extra content that we never upload here. Right now, it's WrestleMania week over on the Patreon, where we're uploading watch-alongs of some of the most famous WrestleMania matches of all time that you yourselves got to vote on. But you also get like the Raw reviews, SmackDown reviews, podcasts 3 days early, and so much more. So go check it out. Patreon.com/SantiZap, link in the description, link in the pinned comment. Let's see your predictions. It's wild that this is even considered a bold prediction, but I'm going with Gunther over Jey. Everyone's expecting Jey to finally win his first world title, but I think WWE could pull a swerve and turn this into another heartbreaking moment for him. I would be on board with this and creating the heartbreaking moment for Jey Uso to create more sympathy, to create an even bigger moment when he finally ends the chase for the World Heavyweight Championship, had we not already ran the heartbreaking moment for Jey Uso angle into the ground. We've already done it time after time after time, and funny enough, many of those times have already been with Gunther specifically. I think now is the time that you finally pull the trigger on the goodwill that you have generated with Jey Uso fans and make him the World Heavyweight Champion. I have a hard time seeing how Jey Uso doesn't walk out of this based on what he's been through already with Gunther specifically, with Gunther murdering his brother, Yeet, and with Gunther already beating him 3 times prior. It's time to pull the trigger on Jey Uso, because if you don't, then at this point, I do think it's a disservice to the fans that have stuck with Jey Uso throughout all of the heartbreak, and I don't think that there's any recovering for the main event aspect of Jey Uso if he loses here again. So I am going to continue to predict that Jey Uso is going to win this. I would be flabbergasted if Gunther somehow pulls off the victory. Dominik Mysterio will win the Intercontinental title by pinning Finn Balor. Here's the thing, you just don't get what we're doing here. I said bold predictions. This is just an obvious spoiler because Dominik Mysterio will indeed win the Intercontinental Championship, and you kind of laid it out perfectly as to who he has to pin. It should be Finn Balor. Finn Balor, who has been belittling Dominik Mysterio time after time after time and making Dominik Mysterio feel like he's not worthy of being in the spot that he's in, that people keep saying X, Y, and Z, while those people we know is Finn Balor himself. I think it would be awesome in a match that's got Braun Breaker and Penta, 2 of the most protected stars that WWE has today, for Dominik Mysterio to walk out as the slimy, weaselly mid-card Intercontinental Champion. I would love for this to actually take place. Now, is WWE brave enough to actually pull the trigger on Dirty Dominik Mysterio? If they're smart, they would. LA Knight retains the United States title due to Solo Sikoa accidentally costing Jacob. I think it's interesting that you add the unintentional or accidental aspect to this prediction, because I could see it playing out that way, considering that Solo Sikoa has been getting involved in WrestleMania matches as far back as WrestleMania 39. With how over Jacob Fatu is at the moment and how, I guess, important bringing in titles to the family has been historically to the bloodline, I have Jacob Fatu winning, and then somewhere either during the celebration or the SmackDown after WrestleMania, we see Solo Sikoa's anger and his distaste, and more than anything, his jealousy towards the success of Jacob Fatu finally boil over and then turns on Jacob Fatu. I don't see it happening at WrestleMania. I actually just have Jacob Fatu straight up winning. Ludwig is going to have some open challenge match at Mania since he's been talking about it, and you know who answers the challenge? Rusev. I think it would be cool if WWE gave Ludwig Kaiser an open challenge, because it is a really easy and very low risk way to reintroduce one of 2 names that's been kind of circulating around the ethos of WWE as they return, either Rusev or Aleister Black, both coming over from AEW. Both are known to the main roster fans, if you want to label them as such, because they've had lengthy careers within the WWE already. So having them make their triumphant return after years of hiatus to the WWE at WrestleMania might seem like a giant giant stage, but I think it's perfect, especially if they're going up against a worker like Ludwig Kaiser, who can get his WrestleMania moment and can easily take a loss as well. Because I'm seeing a lot of people saying that Rusev or Aleister Black should go up against Randy Orton, but then all of a sudden we're handcuffed because no one wants to see Randy lose. Randy should be winning at WrestleMania, and no one wants to see the debut in Rusev or Aleister Black losing. But if you put them up against somebody like Ludwig Kaiser, I feel like that's the best situation possible for everyone. I don't know that it's going to be Rusev, Aleister Black, but I really like this idea, and I actually hope that this happens. Uncle Howdy returns, and the Wyatt Six get John Cena. I wish this was a realistic option. I wish that WWE had actually done a good job of booking the Wyatt Six and making them into a main event threat level faction. However, they're just not that. They can barely justify being in the mid-card at this point with how badly they've been booked into oblivion. So to say that it makes sense in any capacity for the Wyatt Six to go after John Cena in the main event of WrestleMania, the biggest match of the entire year, is just not a feasible, realistic option. John Cena is here, and unfortunately, the Wyatt Six, they're off screen, unfortunately, where they are in the pecking order, if you ask me. I would have loved to live in a world where this was a realistic option because of the history of John Cena and Bray Wyatt, and the fact that Bray Wyatt was one of those people that called for Cena to finally see the light and become evil and give in to those dark tendencies. And now that he finally has, unfortunately, the legacy of Bray Wyatt that's being carried by the Wyatt Six just isn't on the same level in terms of overall pull and status within the hierarchy of WWE for it to make sense to be inserted here. Roman and Seth reconciled during their match and helped Cody retain the next day as his Shield. I don't know, man. That doesn't really make any sense. I don't want to see Roman and Seth reconcile in any way, shape, or form. I feel like that should be the Brett and Shawn of our generation. These guys that just perennially hate each other and should never come back to be a team in any way, shape, or form. But then it's also the aspect that you mentioned, they help Cody retain the next day as a Shield. I know that we saw it with Seth Rollins the previous year, but at least at that time, there was something between Cody and Seth, considering they had just teamed the night before against The Rock and Roman Reigns. But there's no connection, there's no fabric that ties Roman wanting to save or help Cody from his cousin The Rock or from John Cena, and there's nothing connecting Roman and Seth to John Cena in any capacity. This makes no sense, so I hate it, so I'm gonna throw this in the trash. Paul Heyman leaves alone at WrestleMania. This is not something that people have been considering. People have been saying he's gonna walk out with Roman, gonna walk out with Punk, and now the new narrative is that he's going to walk out with Seth Rollins. What if Paul Heyman just says, screw you all, I'm going home, and goes home with nobody? I think that is a possibility, and narratively, I think it can make sense where Paul Heyman just can't properly make his decision as to who to help, Roman or CM Punk, and then the departure of Paul Heyman from the match, which is, by the way, something that Seth Rollins was trying to do, saying, I can remove you from the equation, Paul, and we all thought it was going to be something physical, like attacking him, but what if it's this, creating seeds of doubt where Paul Heyman just voluntarily, mid-match, removes himself from the match, thus opening up a window for Seth Rollins to walk out as the winner, not while aligning himself with Paul Heyman, but while playing mind games with Paul Heyman, which in turn plays mind games with CM Punk and Roman Reigns. I really didn't consider this until you actually brought it up. I think it's kind of brilliant. Cody retains at WrestleMania, but Cena will be the one to stand tall in the end, like Triple H did against The Undertaker at WrestleMania 27. This can set up their next match at SummerSlam or any other big PLE coming up. So John Cena is apparently scheduled to be at Backlash in St. Louis, literally 2.5 weeks after night 2 of WrestleMania. And I have a hard time picturing a world where John Cena is at Backlash, not as the champion. I have a hard time seeing John Cena being at Backlash trying to win the championship. I have a hard time seeing John Cena just flat out not walking out of WrestleMania, period, as the champion. I don't see this playing out the way that you're thinking. I still think Cena is going to win. I think Cena is going to stand tall. I think Cena is going to get his moment of being the top of the mountain, the top of the world championship pecking order at 17 at his last WrestleMania. El Grande Americano will defeat Rey Mysterio in a mask versus mask match, and Rey Mysterio will be unmasked. Okay, so I was originally very much dead set on the idea of El Grande Americano versus Rey Mysterio being a mask versus mask match, and it was actually somebody in my Twitch chat that said, well, if it's mask versus mask, don't you think that this would kind of spoil the actual match? Because they're not going to have like one of the biggest legends in all of professional wrestling like unmask himself. That would just be incredibly disrespectful, which would pretty much spoil the match. It would tell you that El Grande Americano is going to win because he's just too big a star, too big of a legacy and a brand to ever be unmasked. So it would just be too obvious that you'd know that Rey Mysterio would be unmasked. So I'd rather it not be mask versus mask so that we can have a little bit of intrigue going into the match as to who's going to win, so it's not spoiled. Because if it's mask versus mask, obviously El Grande Americano is never going to be unmasked. That would just be too disrespectful. Kevin Owens isn't really injured and cost Randy the title to John Cena. Listen, I warn people against having this train of thought that Kevin Owens is faking it, that Kevin Owens isn't actually injured, that he's working all of us. If that ends up being the case, wonderful. We got work. That's great. But aren't you going to feel a little bit bad if you're saying that Kevin Owens is faking this injury and then he actually is out for 5 years? I don't know. I'd rather choose to believe that the truth is that he actually is injured and that it's a sweet surprise if we end up being worse. So I am choosing to believe that Kevin Owens's injury is not an angle, that it's not a swerve or anything like that. I think it's a legitimate injury. If I end up being wrong, then I end up winning. Like I end up being a fan that gets something that they want, which is Kevin Owens not being injured. But also, let's pretend, we live in a world where, this is right. I guess that kind of makes sense. He still has beef with Cody Rhodes, but that beef really seemed to have ended like properly after the Royal Rumble, considering that's 3-0 that Cody went against Kevin Owens. So I don't see this either way. El Grande Americano will be unmasked by Rey Mysterio, and it will finally be revealed once and for all that he is not Chad Gable. Isn't that crazy that this is a hot take? Yeah, let's pretend in a world where somehow WWE does a very, very insulting thing to Lucha Libre and unmask one of their biggest names in El Grande Americano. It's obviously not Chad Gable, so it's kind of insane that we even need to prove that it's not Chad Gable. But if this does happen, then we'll just all be vindicated, as we've been telling you, I told you so. None of the men's singles champs will retain at WrestleMania. Okay, so you have Braun Breaker losing. I could see it to Dominik Mysterio. You have LA Knight losing to Jacob Fatu. I could see it. Then you have Jey Uso winning, and then you have John Cena winning. Both things that I can see. I could see this being actually realistic, a world where none of the men's singles champions are the same post-WrestleMania. Brock Lesnar returns and conquers Roman, CM Punk, and Seth Rollins. I've actually been seeing this floating around a lot amongst the fandom, and I guess it kind of makes a little bit of sense considering how much of a focal story narrative device Paul Heyman has become in this triple threat match. And these are two of the three biggest Paul Heyman guys that are in this match, and arguably the biggest Paul Heyman guy of all time, Brock Lesnar, isn't involved, so throwing him into the mix in some way, shape, or form wouldn't entirely be out of the blue, right? I think the problem is that there isn't enough. Yes, there's obviously a legacy and a history between Roman and Brock Lesnar. There's a little bit between Brock Lesnar and CM Punk and Brock Lesnar and Seth Rollins. I don't know. It just doesn't feel like it's enough right now to be the swerve of this match, if you ask me. Seth steals Paul to his side with his favor and wins the match. Why do people actually think that Seth Rollins gets a favor? Like, bro, that's just not how favors work. I don't think that Seth Rollins actually has a favor to actually cash in with Paul Heyman, because that would just be weird. It would go against all social norms of favors, because that's just not how people get favors in the first place. Anyways, I still think it would be a mistake to have Seth Rollins walk away as a Paul Heyman guy. Again, I don't mind the idea of Seth Rollins winning because of dissension caused by Paul Heyman, dissension that he himself started by pushing the first domino, by putting the seeds of doubt into Paul Heyman's head. But in my opinion, if you want to post-WrestleMania run the match of Roman Reigns versus CM Punk, it's got to have Paul Heyman in the mix. And if Paul Heyman is off gallivanting with Seth Rollins and his fun, fancy wardrobe, I just don't see how Roman and Punk can, really actually make a proper feud out of it. Glass shatter. Austin comes out to even the score for Cody with Rock and Cena, and boom, stunner on Cody. There is a lot of belief that we're going to be getting Stone Cold Steve Austin in this match, mostly because we didn't get him at last year's WrestleMania, where he made a tremendous amount of sense. So people kind of want to fix things by having Stone Cold Steve Austin appear at this year's WrestleMania. And here's the thing, some people are like, well, it doesn't really make sense. Undertaker didn't make any sense appearing in the main event of last year's WrestleMania, so who cares? Look, the pop would absolutely be insane. I just feel like it would be too much of a repeat if it gets played identical to how it got played at last year's with, you know, helping the babyface win. I think it'd be kind of cool if all of this stuff happens, and even if Stone Cold goes after Cena, maybe once the smoke settles, Cena still somehow manages to pick out the victory. The fans still got to do their huge pop for Stone Cold and Bloodline Rule style run-ins. That would be pretty nice. But I still think John Cena should be winning this. Call me biased because I've got the spinner belt and I'm a huge John Cena fan, but I just genuinely think that it's the right call. But I would love to have Stone Cold Steve Austin just hearing that glass shatter, man. The pop would be just absolutely nutty, but it would still feel a year too late because it should have been last year. Iyo Sky is going to walk out as champion by pinning Bianca. This will end Bianca's WrestleMania winning streak. Then Bianca can blame Rhea, and then we can move into their singles feud for next year and maybe a singles Mania match next year. I think at some point we do have to explore Rhea Ripley versus Bianca Belair, and I don't know that you can really hold off all the way through to next year's WrestleMania, considering that feud's already boiling over right now. It's actually the aspect of the feud that seems to be, in the eyes of many people, overshadowing the actual champion, Iyo Sky. I wouldn't be surprised if, as you say, Iyo Sky somehow ends up picking up the victory because these two hate each other so much that the program after WrestleMania, maybe as early as Backlash or SummerSlam, could be Rhea Ripley versus Bianca Belair. It's just happening too much in the now to predict that this is going to be a match at next year's WrestleMania, even though it's a Mania-worthy match. I don't know. I have a tough time seeing WWE ending Bianca Belair's WrestleMania win streak, but I also see it being a very difficult pill to swallow for WWE to make Iyo Sky a champion as recently as they did. See her become so popular as she has, only for her to lose like a month later. I don't know. This is one of the more unpredictable matches, and that's overall a very good thing. John Cena loses clean, then pulls the Shawn Michaels quote, "I had to know" approach and goes right back to his good guy retirement tour. Bro, I would be pissed. As a John Cena fan, I would be legitimately upset if that's the angle that they take. By the way, that's playing up on Shawn Michaels turning heel to be the heel during the program against Hulk Hogan in the middle of the Ruthless Aggression era, because Hulk Hogan wanted Shawn to be heel. Anyways, politics aside, I wouldn't want this. You know, if you pull the trigger on this, make it be real, you know, don't have it just be a swerve for the sake of swerve that just at the end of the day doesn't end up mattering after a month. At this point, I'm just sold on evil Cena for the rest of this retirement tour, probably hopefully until the very end where he finally has his come to Jesus moment. Bayley turns heel on Lyra in the tag team match to set up a future feud going into Backlash. But why? Why are they even a fucking team going into this gauntlet match that hasn't happened as of the making of this video? This should have been a WrestleMania program in a WrestleMania feud, man. I feel like this would be hella underwhelming if you ask me. Whatever. Randy Orton gets added to Cody versus Cena. Okay, had the news of Kevin Owens broken out, let's say, maybe immediately after Elimination Chamber, I would say that there's a possibility to this because then you have enough time to insert Randy into the program. But now, where we literally have 2 episodes of SmackDown before WrestleMania, and one of those episodes is literally less than 12 hours before WrestleMania even begins, I don't know, man. I have a tough time seeing where this happens. I think that Randy Orton is going to end up getting a match for sure. I think that the best case scenario would be a match against Nick Aldis, because I feel like Cody versus Cena would be entirely way too rushed at the moment, and that is something I do not want them to rush. This man will make his presence felt. I feel like not having Austin at WrestleMania last year was a missed opportunity. WWE have a chance to rewrite that and have Cody and him confront the new alliance of Rock and Cena, siding with Cody. This would be cool to see. Yeah, I feel like this makes way more sense. Sometimes, we try to create these crazy situations, but Stone Cold Steve Austin being out there and then siding with the bad guys, that to me makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. That would also mean that in 2025, we would have both Stone Cold and John Cena turning heel. I don't buy it. Now, what I could see is at some point in the match, we have Stone Cold and Cody Rhodes on one side and John Cena and The Rock on the other side, and Stone Cold and The Rock kind of nullify each other, thus leaving John Cena and Cody Rhodes in the ring. I would love to have Stone Cold even the odds as opposed to sway the odds in favor of Cody Rhodes. Rhodes. I doubt that this will happen, but I think it's a pretty bold idea. John Cena pins Cody Rhodes in under 5 minutes. No outside interference, no other shenanigans, just wins clean and walks out the champion. I don't think that this works in the context of 2025 John Cena, because there is nothing in the past several years that tells us that John Cena is this dominant physical force anymore. He had to cheat to win the Elimination Chamber and take advantage of an opportunity that was put in front of him, something that in the past he would have never done. Before Elimination Chamber, the man was a losing machine, losing match after match after match. There is nothing that tells me Cena is the scary, imposing physical figure in this match. To me, that's Cody Rhodes, the fighting champion, the guy that's on a crazy win streak, the guy that's there week in and week out. If anybody's gonna squash anybody and have it make sense, it would be Cody squashing Cena. In my eyes, the way Cena is dangerous as heel Cena isn't because he's physically imposing, because he's just not that guy anymore. I think it's because now it's a Cena that, unlike before in the previous 20 years leading into this, he's now willing to do the evil, dastardly, underhanded things to win. Omos returns during Logan Paul versus AJ Styles and attacks Styles because he hasn't forgotten how he was treated by him, and helps Logan Paul win and essentially becomes his bodyguard after that. Fits Logan's character perfectly. So I wanted to hate this. I wanted to be like, oh, this is just so stupid. It kind of works. It kind of works. Like, if you think that Omos is a cool enough reveal at WrestleMania, but I see what you're saying. You know, we would get a payoff in of the story of AJ Styles and Omos while giving Logan Paul somebody else to help protect him in episodes of Raw, etc. It works. It's just not particularly very hype. Like, I wouldn't be popping out of my seat if this happened, but if this were to happen, it kind of makes sense. Jey versus Gunther will be the best match of night one. That has a really uphill battle, but there are matches on night one that have already been revealed, and it looks like definitively the weaker night of the two. I think the best match right now that's scheduled for night one, if you ask me, is definitely the men's triple threat, but also Tiffany Stratton and Charlotte Flair. So Jey Uso versus Gunther needs to be like the best match that these two could possibly put together for it to be the best match of the night. I would love for you to be right, because that would shut up so many people, especially the Jey Uso haters that think that he's just a yeet merchant and can't wrestle. Logan's Prime bottle will have Kai Cenat in this year. I think that this would be awesome. Kai Cenat would be such a huge draw and such a fun pub. I also think that it could be Mr. Beast because of the Logan Paul and Mr. Beast collaboration of Lunchly and, Prime and the Feastable chocolate bars. So I could see that being like a really big marketing opportunity for both of those two that they might not pass up. And there's definitely a lot more connection between Logan Paul and Mr. Beast than there is, between Logan and Kai Cenat. And Mr. Beast would be the bigger name in this situation. Jade Cargill versus Naomi will be the best women's match of the weekend. Okay, so I know that I've said that Jade Cargill versus Naomi has been the best built match going into WrestleMania, and I stand by that statement. It hasn't needed much glitz and glamour, just two women that absolutely hate each other, and it's the first women's singles match at WrestleMania that doesn't involve a title in 20 years at this point. So it's a match to definitely celebrate. That being said, I am at least a little bit skeptical of a long singles Jade Cargill match, because we haven't really seen that in the WWE as of yet. This almost feels like a re-debut of Jade Cargill, if you can kind of believe that, because we've only really seen Jade Cargill cook in the tag team environment where she can rely on other people to also make the match good. But now, when she's 50% of the equation to make the match good, I'm less convinced. I want to be convinced, and all eyes for me are on this match. I can't wait to see it, but I'm not co-signing this until I see it as a marquee, amazing match. I need to see it first. Drew loses again, and he disappears for a long time. Damian will have an opportunity versus Jey Uso at Backlash. Well, Damian is on a different brand. I know that brands and the brand split isn't really a thing. People could just sort of cross from brands, it seems, at any moment, anytime, any place. But I guess it would be a cool, full circle moment to have Jey Uso versus Damian Priest again at Backlash again, but this time with the roles reversed as to who's champion and who's challenger. But even though I don't have a problem with Damian Priest going after the world championship, my problem with what you said is that Drew's gonna lose. No, Drew can't lose. Drew cannot lose. I don't have many more thoughts on that. Just simply, Drew can't lose. Travis Scott interferes in the main event and accidentally hits Cena with the title. Oh my God. I hate that I agree that Travis Scott needs to be involved in some way, shape, or form, but I just don't want Travis Scott involved in the finish, because this would just give me PTSD flashbacks from SummerSlam 2015 with Jon Stewart costing Cena the match and helping Seth Rollins win. A match that, by the way, was amazing up until that moment, and now everyone just clowns on the entire match because of it. I don't want Travis Scott kind of creating a meme moment like that in the main event against, in between the two of the biggest names that this industry has right now. I think that Travis Scott might be out there in some capacity, but for him to be the difference maker, I do not want that. Want bold? Simple. Finn Balor actually winning. That's good. All right. We'll leave it there, folks. Thank you so much for watching this video. Take care. Be wonderful people. And we're close to WrestleMania, folks. Goodbye. Get out of here.